We've all been there, right? You're just flipping through some pages, minding your own business, and then, bam, that sharp, electric sting. The dreaded paper cut. So why on earth does this tiny little slice pack such a massive, painful punch? Well, let's get into it. I mean, seriously, why do they hurt so much? From the smallest kid to the biggest CEO, everyone knows this specific kind of pain. For a wound that's barely even there, it feels just completely out of proportion. What is the secret behind that sting?
It really is a paradox, isn't it? A wound you can barely even see that feels worse than some scrapes and cuts that are way bigger. Well, it turns out the reason isn't just one single thing. It's more like a perfect storm of three culprits all working together. So, let's break them down, one by one.
Okay, first up, the real estate. As they say in property, it's all about location, location, location. I mean, think about it. A paper cut on your leg just wouldn't be the same. The real problem is where they almost always happen, on our fingertips. And that, my friends, makes all the difference.
Your fingertips are basically your brain's #1 way of processing the world through touch. They're your body's frontline sensors, gathering all sorts of information. And to do that job, they are absolutely jam-packed with nerve endings.
Now, there's a scientific name for these little guys. Nociceptors. They're the specialized nerve endings that scream, ouch, to your brain when they detect damage. And your fingertips have tons and tons of them. So getting a paper cut there is like setting off a massive fire alarm in one of the most densely wired parts of your entire body. And to make matters worse, you can't just stop using your hands, right? Every single time you type on a keyboard, grab your phone, or even just bend your finger, that fresh little wound gets pulled open and irritated all over again. This constant movement just keeps the pain going and really slows down any healing.
So, the location is a huge piece of the puzzle, but it's not the whole story. Now we've got to talk about culprit number 2, the weapon itself. Yep, that simple piece of paper is a surprisingly vicious little blade.
I know what you're thinking. It's just paper, right? It's flimsy, it's flexible. How could it possibly do so much damage? Well, ironically, those seemingly harmless qualities are exactly what make it so brutal to our skin.
See, unlike a really sharp razor or a kitchen knife that makes a single clean slice, the edge of a piece of paper is actually pretty dull and uneven when you look at it on a microscopic level. So instead of cutting you cleanly, it acts a lot more like a tiny, jagged saw. This is a great way to think about it. If you've ever tried to cut something with a dull knife, you know it doesn't slice smoothly. It catches, it pulls, and it tears. That's exactly what a paper's edge does to your skin. It creates all this ragged, microscopic damage that you can't see, but you can definitely feel. All right, we've got a super sensitive location and a surprisingly brutal weapon. So what's the third and final piece of this painful puzzle? Well, it's all about the nature of the wound itself, exposure.
Now this is where things get a little weird. Paper cuts are almost always very shallow. They just slice through that very top layer of skin, right where all those pain-sensing nociceptors live. But they're often not deep enough to cause a lot of bleeding. And this, believe it or not, leads to a totally counterintuitive problem.
Get this. The fact that there's no blood, or very little of it, can actually make the pain worse. I know, it sounds completely backward. Normally, when you get a cut, blood rushes in, clots, and forms a protective little scab. With a paper cut, you often don't get that natural first aid response.
Without that little protective blood clot, those damaged nerve endings are just left wide open, totally exposed to the air, to water, to germs, to everything. This constant irritation keeps those pain signals firing off to your brain over and over, making the hurt feel stronger and last way longer.
So, now we've got all three pieces of this very painful puzzle. Let's put them all together and look at what makes up this painful trifecta. So there you have it. The agonizing, outsized pain of a simple paper cut comes down to these three things. 1, you're getting cut in a hypersensitive location that's packed with nerves. 2, the weapon you're using isn't a sharp blade, it's a dull edge that tears and rips your skin. And 3, the cut is so shallow that it often doesn't bleed, leaving those damaged nerves completely exposed. It's just the absolute perfect storm for pain.
And that's why paper cuts hurt so darn much. Kind of wild when you break it all down, right? It really makes you wonder, what other seemingly small, everyday things out there pack a much bigger punch than we give them credit for? Definitely something to think about.